Hey guys, how you doing? My name is TJ, and in this video, I'm going to be sitting down with my friend and she tells us her journey of going from working in advertising to working at a tech startup. Now, lots of people think that you have to learn how to code or be a software engineer before you can work in tech, and that is just not the case because there are so many other roles outside of coding and engineering when it comes to working in the tech industry. So this video is going to be exploring one of those roles, which is the role of customer experience. So you definitely want to make sure that you stick through and watch this whole video because we cover a whole host of topics, including what it's like working at a tech startup when you don't have a technical background at all whatsoever. And we also touch on the role of customer experience and what that entails. And we also talk about another non-technical role that's great for people that are interested in tech, which is the role of user experience. So you definitely want to stick through and watch this whole video. And for those of you that are interested in scheduling a phone call with me so you can ask me your questions directly, make sure you check the description below for a link for you to schedule that call. Today we are going to be sitting down with my friend as she tells us about how she went from working in advertising to working at a tech startup. So would you mind briefly introducing yourself to the audience and telling us a bit about what you were doing in advertising as well?
Yeah, sure. My name's Akua. I started my career in advertising, graduated with a degree in advertising from the University of Texas, Hook'em Horns. From there, I had the 5-year, 10-year, 20-year plan of working in advertising, working at Essence Magazine, doing the whole media thing. So right after college, went into working at really amazing advertising agencies. Wieden & Kennedy was my first internship, which is really well known for Nike and Coca-Cola. Yeah, as big clients on their roster. And then went to New York, which is the mecca of advertising in the US, and worked at a digital media company called Kara. So that was a good foray into, the different types of advertising media. I quickly learned in New York that advertising in the way that we were taught very specifically in school was not the only way. Right, there's not just working at an agency, working for specific clients. I was opened up to the world of tech and opened up to the other avenues that my skills in advertising could transfer. Interesting. And how were you introduced to tech in advertising? Yeah, so a lot of it was at the time, working in digital media planning was very numbers based and it was very tech based in nature. So I worked on the Pfizer account, and basically we were buying digital media ads on different publications online. So health.com, WebMD, the bigger publications there. And what was very tech about it was that we would use data to target specific people. I see. So the words programmatic, if you're in the advertising industry, or just data on people in general was what we were collecting, and using that data to then target them or understand how we can optimize campaigns. So I was like, okay, this is actually very scientific. It's not just about creating fun and exciting advertising. Interesting. That's cool. So how did that now transition into you working at a tech startup? Yeah, so that is an interesting road. Let's go down it, Yeah, so was working at, in the digital planning role and realized that I didn't want to do the same things over and over again. It was it felt like I was doing like Groundhog Day every month, just looking at reports month to month, which is great for learning how to look at reports and read data. But I realized I wanted something more. So I just chatted with a recruiter who was sourcing different roles in different companies in New York. And she actually introduced me to the ad tech world and really different ad tech world. And so different companies that used data on individuals or customers to then sell advertising or sell advertising space. So the company I ended up working for then was Taboola. And Taboola is a content marketing or content recommendations platform that basically is embedded on the bottom of articles, and it says content you may like, right? So you click and you kind of go down your own rabbit hole. So that's y'all, Yes, that's causing the rabbit holes on the web. All the rabbit holes, yeah. Wow, so what type of technical skills did you have to learn to kind of help you to make that leap? Yeah, so it wasn't extremely technical at that point. I went into Taboola working as an account manager. So I managed a book of different clients, from mattress companies, if you can believe it, advertising on widgets online, to
Wait,
gym wear.
hold on.
Yeah.
So I've like always been super curious about these mattress companies because I never see anyone going there, and I always wonder who is buying mattresses for there to be a mattress company on every corner like McDonald's. So are people actually buying these, or are they money laundering services like people think they are on Reddit?
So whenever I was at Taboola and I was working with mattress companies, that was at the tipping point of the boom of all the mattress companies you see now, right? That was when Casper was just getting started, was just being more of a household name in terms of mattresses, and other companies like Lisa, Tuft and Needle started coming on the scene.
Okay.
So that was the nascent period of that. Right now, I think mattress companies sell a lot more than just mattresses, so that's how they make their money these days.
Okay.
Yeah, they sell linens, pillows, they might sell furniture, so it's more than just mattresses.
Okay, awesome. So I guess can you now tell us more about your role now as a customer experience manager, right?
Yeah, so building off of the account management and client management skills I had at Taboola, I basically learned skills that had to do with sales in a sense, and learned ways in which you can optimize, right? So digital media planning again was super optimization based. Look at the data. What can you do based on the data? The account management at Taboola was more from a business perspective, how to improve a client's business, right? If they have a KPI or something that they're shooting for.
And KPI is?
Key performance indicator.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for asking. So it's something that, a client is looking to achieve very specifically. I need more signups. I need more sales, right?
Those are examples of KPIs, sign up, sales. Can you give us other potential examples?
It could be customer satisfaction could be one.
Okay, like ratings, 5-star, et cetera.
Exactly. So using all those skills, I was then able to I wouldn't say finagle my way, but I was kind of able to transfer, and transfer those skills into a company called Wethos, which was at the time a digital agency. It was a fully remote company, but the point of it was to bring freelancers together to make teams to then service client projects.
Interesting concept. All right.
So I kind of went full circle, right? Advertising to digital media planning to ad tech back to advertising for a hot second. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so I guess what is a typical Tuesday like for you in this role now? Yeah,
so the advertising side of Wethos changed in 2020. So a day in the life of an account manager at Wethos is no longer, because the role then changed into customer experience. So once we decided that our offering was more valuable as a platform and the platform that we had internally used to service clients, we realized that if we sold that platform to freelancers, it would just be more valuable for them and for that community to make more money. And so instead of us being an agency, we then became a tech company.
Okay.
So the day in the life of then account manager turned customer experience manager was all about setting up the processes and a baseline for customer support.
Okay.
At the beginning, it's a tech startup, right? It's a startup true and true. There's like anywhere from 10 people to 20 people, right?
Who
are
just
there,
constantly fluctuating
between that number, but the idea being that the job that I had or the job that I was working on was touching a lot of different things and was building from the ground up. So typical day in the life was answering questions that customers had and came in and asked about the platform or about the company as we changed, so people were a little confused, creating different help center content that would show them, hey, this is what we are now, and be a bit more proactive about support and them self-serving. It was taking onboarding calls and creating a process around how to onboard onto this platform as we were building it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just like, here's a completed platform. It was like, here's what we have, and here's where we're going, and here's what you can do now, but hold your attention because we have more to come.
Yep.
So it was
next week, we have another release and feature coming out. Okay.
Exactly. So sales at the same time of like marketing at the same time of customer support, all in one.
Okay, so I guess what would you say is the most important skill in this role?
Yeah, so for customer experience, it varies at different companies.
Okay.
But I would say through and through, you need to have empathy for the customer. You can't be someone who is like, it's all about the business, it's all about, bottom line number one. I mean, you need to have that balance, but if you could care less about what the customer wants, you won't be successful in this role. Because a part of building something whether it's a new feature or a new product, is about understanding the market fit and understanding who that user is and the value that they'll attain from it. And so if you put something out there and the user doesn't get value from it, you need to talk to the user and understand why aren't you getting value? How can we improve? So if you don't have the empathy to really be the voice of that customer in the boardroom, in front of CEOs or in front of your higher ups, then you're not going to build the best product.
Interesting. So you touched on something very, very interesting. So as a software engineer for me, it is very valuable to always talk to people in customer experience because you guys are at the forefront talking to the actual end users, right? So can you kind of speak onto your input when it comes to actually building like the software? Like, do you feel like you have some input with the engineers?
Yes. Yeah, and with a small team at Wethos, we had really direct impact because our team was, like you said, the front lines of talking to customers. It wasn't just hearing their feedback and hearing what's broken or what bugs they're experiencing, but it was also what requests they had, right? They were questioning in ways that we didn't think of and in ways that we said, oh shoot, like, you're right, we never thought of it that way, maybe we need to, right? So we categorized all that feedback and figured out a way to tag it all and create a structure of prioritization so that when we came to our product team, we would say, hey, not just like, hey, here's all this feedback, here's what they're saying, but here's what they're saying and here's where it's ranking. Here's, the amount of feedback we're getting in these categories. We need to pay attention to this because people are talking and they have feedback about that.
So basically you guys talking to the customers helps you to identify the biggest pain points to prioritize as an engineering team, essentially.
Exactly.
That's awesome. What would you say that you enjoyed the most about this role?
I enjoyed, and this is my personal experience.
Why do you have to preface it with that?
No, because I think there's different things that people can get excited about customer experience, but I enjoyed the user research side. Like I felt like at times I was a user researcher, right? I would create different interview guides and like go out and interview people. I kind of put the hat on research at all times. So when I was doing those onboarding calls, which again, sometimes in a customer success role, right? Those typically customer success or salespeople have those type of roles, but because we were a small company, I would also do onboarding calls. And I would turn those into user research sessions as well, right? I would walk them through, but I'd be like, oh, so what do you think about this feature? Oh, how would you use it? Or if they were sharing their screen and going through, I would be like, oh, like interesting that you click there. Why did you click there first? Right? So always having that like experimental research mind was something I really enjoyed and hope that I continue to do. I mean, even if I'm not in customer experience, right? If the role doesn't say that, that's what I'm going to look for in another job.
I mean, and honestly, anytime that you are working at a startup, you are in customer experience somehow, some way.
That's true.
Because that's what your job depends on, the actual customer. So you mentioned that you really enjoyed doing the actual user research behind like the features and how you guys implement it. Have you heard of user experience?
I have. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that? Well, first of all, could you kind of explain to the audience what UX is, user experience?
Yeah. As I understand it, user experience is that process of, it's a process. I wouldn't necessarily say it's one thing. It's a process of understanding the customer needs or the customer journey.
The customer journey. There we go.
And then figuring out different ways to optimize it, whether that's internally doing different workshops or things with the customer or with your internal team to understand what that customer journey looks like, the ideal path, the path you're on. Sometimes UX also involves doing different mock-ups and different, I forget the technical terms for it, but like wireframes, exactly. And like putting them together to then pass on to
us,
the engineers.
The software engineers.
Exactly. So I think UX kind of has a lot of different components of that.
Do you think that kind of meshes with your interests in terms of like user research, or how do you think it differs?
Yeah, I think it does. I think that, and I say I think because I still am wrapping my head around UX.
Yeah. Because roles like user experience designer actually focus a lot on the customer journey and help to design the overall software experience. Yeah. With the customer as the central figure in mind.
Yes. So, which sounds the most interesting to me, right? Like again, because the way I think as a business person is, what does the customer want and need? Are we servicing the customer right? And then what ways can I get more information about how we can service them better or how we're doing, right? Keeping the pulse. So if that is that, then great.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so what would you say is the toughest part about your role, or just the part that you don't, I don't want to say that you don't enjoy the most, or that could be improved upon? How about that?
I'll say two things.
Oh, you got multiple?
I got multiple. I mean, everyone has, a few in each bucket. But I would say one thing is it's tough talking to customers all the time, right?
Yeah.
You have to always be on and kind of, in
like a bubbly personality or mood,
just kind of warm and friendly and just available for whatever mood they throw at you that day.
No matter what you're going through.
Exactly. So
That's
you're
tough.
kind of representing the company in a different way than people who don't have to talk face to face with customers, and that can be hard. And that can, especially when you're building a product. There were times when I was like, man, like, are we building the right product? Is our product valuable? But then when I would go internally to our team meetings and our CEO would, talk about the product in a way, I'd be like, okay, yes, we are. And like, just being reminded of our mission and what we set out to do.
Okay.
Be like, okay, yes, this is good. It's okay that so-and-so had this feedback, that's fine. So that's one thing. Customer support and customer feedback is tough at times. A second thing is working at a startup, you have to be open to whatever.
Open to doing whatever it takes.
Whatever happens. It's like, every week something new happens. Every
Always.
single week. You can't be someone who's like, I need my job to be this, this, and this every single day. If you are, you might struggle in a startup environment.
Interesting. So can you kind of touch more on your experience working at a startup? Like, did you have any kind of idea as to what to actually expect before working at a startup, or were you just kind of thrown into it?
Yeah, I worked at 3 different startups. Taboola was the first, and I worked in then smaller and smaller startups as I went.
Oh, so the first startup was the biggest, and then it got smaller. And how many people were at the first startup you worked at?
So Taboola was 500 people.
Jesus, is that a startup still?
Well, so in how they operated, yes. Maybe it wasn't 500. Sorry, it was 200 in our. It was 200.
Dude, that's a big drop.
I call it
you slide
because of how they operated. But 200, 250 across an office in New York and an office in London.
Okay.
So I say that that's still a startup because they were just looking to like exponentially grow, hyper growth at that point. And they have, and now they're a public company.
Wow.
So they got through
they
that kind
IPO'd
of,
already?
Yes, they did. Actually, just a few months ago. So newly in. Check out TBLA.
Hey.
So they newly got to that growth.
She's trying to get paid. She said, I have shares in this company. Please go buy the stock. I love it.
Go check it out. Go check it out. But so they exponentially grew. So that, it felt like a startup because processes were just in place.
Okay.
They had just been put in place, and the people who had built everything from the ground up were then getting the, I guess, recognition that they deserved and got moved up, right? And could build a team under them. Remote Year was the second startup I worked at, which was about 100, 150 people across the globe, fully remote.
Remote Year, wow.
Remote Year, yeah. Also check Remote Year out. They're awesome. And they operated a startup because there were just so many different teams, but things were changing week to week. We would change strategy week to week. We would change our sales tactics. So there wasn't a process put in place. And things moved really quickly, and the team expanded and contracted quite often.
Wow.
And then Wethos was 10 to 20 people.
Okay.
And so, expanded and contracted in that same vein.
Like range.
Yeah, but it was all hands on deck. You do whatever is needed. You come with your skill set, and then however that skill set is expressed, it is expressed, and you do the work that needs to be done.
Okay, awesome. If somebody was interested in this role as a customer experience manager, what type of skills do they need to focus on, and essentially, like, what can they do to help get this role, essentially?
Yeah, I would say in interviews, definitely play up your client service skills or your
soft skills. Or
yes, your soft skills and your ability to talk to different types of people and solve problems for people, right? Not just going by a playbook, but figuring out different ways to solve problems for people.
Well, here, so you mentioned data a lot initially. Did you end up having to kind of learn any type of SQL or any type of like tools to analyze data, anything like that?
I did not, but I want to. I want to skill up in that level. Yeah, in that area. I think.
Why?
Because if I want to be able to search for my own data sets, right? Not every company has a resident data analyst.
That's true.
Ethos did not. So the idea of being able to look at your own data and look at the data you have, be able to organize it or slice it and dice it so you can understand what problems or what can be improved, I think is important.
Okay.
And also I keep getting asked that when I talk to different people. They're like, do you know it? So I'm like, I probably should.
Yeah.
If people keep asking me about that.
Okay. What is the typical career path for somebody in customer experience?
Yeah, I think the typical career path is normally someone comes into it from a customer support or customer associate role at first, may go into more specific customer support or may dive more into the user experience, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Depends on the company, but that's typically the trajectory of someone from customer support. You can also come into customer experience, again, traditionally, not that this is a fine line, from customer success, which tends to be a more salesy role, like post-sales, but like helping a user get more value out of their time with the company or their journey with the company, upselling them and things like that, or account management. I've heard product managers coming into customer experience. And then from there as well, customer experience, again, speaks to a lot of different roles. So it speaks to marketing. It speaks to user experience. So I think those roles
product
as well.
Operations,
as well, and product development, yes, operations. So it's a very versatile role and a very versatile path from where you are.
Okay. Well, yeah. So what type of numbers in terms of like pay can people expect in this role? And you don't have to disclose your salary, but just kind of like give us an idea of the typical ranges that someone can experience at the different like junior level and then mid-level and up.
Yeah, and this is guesstimates since I came from a weird path into it. But I think at a junior level, you should expect in the 40s. And growing into a manager, you should expect in the 50s, 60s as you get more experienced. Growing into more of a senior manager or just a manager that has a lot more experience in the 70s, 80s. Depending on the company, 90s if they're dishing it out. And then if you're going director level or you're leading a full team or leading a department, you should expect in the 90s and definitely six figures. Okay,
awesome. That's it. Before we end, do you have any kind of like tips, advice, or just any type of advice or shout outs? I know you plugged Remote Year earlier. And the company that you own shares in, is there, any last words that you have for the audience before we go?
Yeah, I would just say if you're interested in customer experience, do your research. There's a lot about it online. And again, it varies by company. One company, it could be customer support. Like you were saying, one company, it could be user research or user experience. So just do your research on what the role is, what's needed. Clearly, I need to learn SQL. Just get a better understanding of what it is and start to flex those skills. If you're in a current role, start to see what ways that you can flex those skills in customer experience. If you are looking going to the support side, shadow support people, see what type of feedback they're getting, shadow product managers, shadow people that are already in those roles. Talk to people like we're having this conversation to see what their day-to-day is, to see how it varies, and pay attention to the areas that actually overlap with the job you're doing, because that's what you want to play up on your resume and in interviews. Is like, I'm already doing this at my company and I see how it's a fit with your company or that role.
Awesome. That's it. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us today. Really, really enjoyed this, and that's it.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thanks.